all cards on the table here. The only reason why this is a no spoiler review is because I actually didn't retain enough of the information to just be able to regurgitate it back to you. But I hasten to add, all of that knowledge is still in here somewhere, I hope, informing everything I say and everything I do and how I live my life, so it was worth it after all. So you've probably all seen this book, A Very Short Introduction to something, 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 English literature, commonly referred to as VSIs, Very Short Introductions. And they have them for over 500 different topics, all written by experts in their field and published by the Oxford University Press. God bless him. Well, they're amazing, in short. And I imagine all of them are, because this one certainly was. And I want to just call this a no spoiler discussion instead of a no spoiler review, even though I did just give it a 2 thumbs up. So yeah, welcome to the no spoiler discussion of A Very Short Introduction to English Literature by Jonathan Bate. First things first.
First things first, I eat your brains.
First things first. A Very Short Introduction to English Literature is written by a gentleman called Jonathan Bate, Sir Andrew Jonathan Bate, who is he's a British academic, biographer, critic, broadcaster, scholar, novelist, playwright, poet. He is also the Senior Research Fellow and Professor of English Literature at Worcester College, Oxford. Jonathan Bate specializes in Shakespeare and Romanticism, and this is all just according to Wikipedia. And in short, all of this means that there is no better person to be giving us this very short introduction. The second of these first things, it's a bit of a confession. I don't know about you, but when I used to hear the term English literature, I used to think of literally all literature written in English, even if it was translated into English from some other language, which means that my understanding of the term English literature really just meant literature as a whole, which I admit is very ignorant, and some would no doubt call it problematic. A Very Short Introduction to English Literature by Sir Andrew Jonathan Bate is specifically about literature from England. Because what exactly do we mean by English? You know what I mean? Because England hasn't always been the England as we know it today, right? So when we say English literature, do we actually mean British? So does that include like the Scottish and the Welsh authors? And also, what of the Irish though? And does it include Americans? I mean, it is written in English, or does it only include like pre-1776 Americans? Also, what of the former British colonies? Because the sun never set on the British Empire, right? Maybe that's why I thought that English literature just meant all literature. But seriously, it does beg the question. For example, because I live in Hong Kong, is literature written in Hong Kong pre-1997, which is when Hong Kong was handed back by the British to the Chinese, is that literature considered by default English literature? Or is it Hong Kong or even Chinese literature? Literally and obviously, these are questions I've not considered before, because I just thought English literature meant literature. And these are exactly the sort of questions that are addressed, discussed in this tiny, informative, easy, and quick to read book. Jonathan Bate, Sir Andrew Jonathan Bate, well, he addresses all of those questions and basic questions like, what is English literature? When did English literature begin? Like, is Beowulf considered English literature? Also, what of the studying of English literature? He also covers all of the different movements in English literature, the genres, including, genius by the way, children's literature, which is exactly where he begins the book. He covers obviously Shakespeare, being a Shakespearean academic, and drama, like plays and such, as well as poetry. He talks about the evolution of the English novel, specifically the English novel, and also about Englishness. What makes something English? You're just gonna have to read this book. I swear, it will only take you 3 hours and it's well worth it. One idea that particularly stuck with me after having read this book, well, actually, first of all,
thirdly,
I'm so glad that the inclination to want to learn struck me, admittedly 20 years too late, because now I have a general context in which I can place the books that I read, and that gives me, like, I guess, a fundamental understanding of where the book I'm reading fits into, like, the timeline of books. Kind of like how the Marvel films started to mean more, make more sense, once we knew that Thanos was the big bad, and every film until Endgame is leading up to that ultimate showdown. So, customary bad analogy out of the way, we are now nicely at the point where I tell you what stuck with me most about reading A Very Short Introduction to English Literature by Jonathan Bate, Sir Andrew Jonathan Bate. Literature, not specifically English literature, is a conversation we have through art, whatever that is. It's a separate topic, another video. Actually, I'm not going to make that video. Maybe I will. It's a conversation we have on the cultural scale about who we are as humans and what we as humans are dealing with at the time the book was written, and how we're dealing with whatever it is that we're dealing with. The humanness of it all in the face of whatever it is. And that is, well, it's profound. Think about it. Here's another shitty example. You know, we used to live in small communities. Dunbar's number, link in the description. Then our population just exploded because of medicine and farming. Then free market capitalism happened, which led to unprecedented wealth disparity within this, like, exponentially growing population. And then the internet happened, and we all have a voice now, but not all of us are heard in the same way, or even heard at all. By the way, fiction, literature, art in general, about revolutions in farming and medicine and free market capitalism and the atomization and commoditization of the individual, they all exist too. So it's like we're at this point now where we all have a voice, but we're not all heard, and there's incredible disparity of all kinds, and there's open and somewhat free access to information, which, by the way, is a big one, because historically humans just love to gatekeep information. We can see inequality manifest in daily life in the news, the never-ending news cycle. Is it any wonder that superhero films became a thing? Is it any wonder that post-apocalyptic YA young adult fiction became a thing? Is it any wonder that self-help as a category is like a booming thing? Likewise, you've actually probably heard of this as well. Authors saying something like that the book that they wrote already existed out there somewhere, nebulous and immaterial, and they, the author, all they had to do was to, like, pluck it out and then pen it down. So then, is it any wonder that Bram Stoker's Dracula, a gothic horror, which, by the way, I'm finishing this weekend, I'm reading it live on Twitch, and there's a podcast link down there. So Dracula, a gothic horror, was written at the end of the 19th century, after a whole century of romance novels like Jane Austen's and Charlotte Bronte's. And is it any wonder that after the Fransons and the Eggers and the McCarthys, along came David Foster Wallace and then John Green? No. The answer is no.
like, share, subscribe.